So Nehemiah chapter 6, and we're just going to tonight really just focus on two verses, verse 1 and verse number 2. Not really going to go much further than that, just because it kind of does an introduction to what's going on, but some of the meat of the message, you might say, for Nehemiah chapter 6 is best put together from from verse number 3 all the way down to the end of the chapter. And I'm not going to try to squeeze all that in tonight. And so we're going to look at the problem that gets presented. Now, we've already seen in chapter 4, we saw external opposition. In chapter 5, we saw internal opposition. And tonight in chapter 6, we begin to see what would be called a covert opposition. All right? The loudmouths who spent a lot of time making sure everybody could hear them as they mocked and made fun, trying to discourage all the people, now they begin to, in chapter 6, there begins to be a focus on really just one. And here's the reason why. If you can't discourage the whole, then try to damage the head. And if you can take out one, you can affect the entire body. And in this particular case, Nehemiah being the one given the responsibility by God to lead in the desire to see the walls rebuilt, to see the gates put back in place, to see Jerusalem get back to a position and a point where they have the temple rebuilt, the walls rebuilt, the gates in place, and they're beginning to see the resemblance of what used to exist now coming back into existence again. By the way, that is the essence of revival. The whole point of revival is not something being birthed brand new. The whole point of revive is something that already once was, but for some reason and somehow had ceased to be, being given its breath again, its life, its fire again. And that is exactly what the children of Israel are seeing. Their desire is to see a revival, and not just a revival in the aspect of the city of Jerusalem, which is home for them. It is the location where the temple is and all, and that's great. But as a whole, it wasn't just to see the city revived. It was, in Nehemiah's desire, the city was a heartbreak, yes. But as a whole, and we'll see it when we get to chapter 8, but as a whole, Nehemiah and Ezra and some others that are around, they see when they're around the people of God in Jerusalem, the ones that have been kind of out of captivity for a while, and they're back home, per se, quote unquote home, but what does home look like? It's a shambles. And it's been that way for years, and nothing has improved, and nothing has changed. And honestly, they've come out of captivity, but they're just meandering. They have no real focus or drive or purpose behind them. There's no great conviction in the children of Israel. And you have Ezra, I believe it is, that's preaching there. I think Micah might even be involved at this point, but I can't remember all the names right off my head very well at this moment. But you have several different ones who are in the same time frame, and Nehemiah is here as well. And each one of these individuals that were given a particular task by God for the purpose of God's people and of the temple and of the aspect of putting God back in their focus again. One thing that all of these leaders, you might say, that God sent to them, the one thing they noticed is the people had a problem. The city was torn down. The city was definitely in desolation, but the people themselves had the biggest issue. The people were the ones struggling, and Nehemiah knew it. And Nehemiah knew the city's going to get rebuilt, but one of the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish is something in the heart of the people. We're trying to get something accomplished in the heart of the Jews to get God back in their sight, back in their desires, to get the Holy One of Israel back into the proper focus of each and every one of them. And so this rebuilding of Jerusalem is just one more piece of getting the children of Israel, or getting the Jews, to want to get back to what had been lost. When they see this city, as long as something is in destruction, it's so depressing, why try? But as soon as you get surrounded by change, and you get surrounded by something happening that all of a sudden, I'll give you this scenario. They say, well, and it's still true, it's not lived by much, but they say you should dress the part if you want the job. You have the children of Israel here, and when you're dealing with the destruction they're dealing with, here's what happens. When you get yourself surrounded by people who are dressing more classy, I'll put it that way. When you just, if you got into a habit of being sloppy, and you get around people and you surround yourself with people that don't do sloppy, they don't do it's not like black tie event 24/7, but they dress sharp. They comb their hair. They take a bath on a regular basis. Okay? Here's what you'll find with anyone that will surround themselves with a particular environment. You'll find that if there is a solid, uplifting, encouraging environment to step it up a notch, and they surround themselves around that, there'll be something inside of them that will either go one of two ways. They're either going to feel completely uncomfortable and I don't want to be here, or it's going to say, you know what, I think I could step it up a notch. Why? Because there is encouragement. There is influence. And by the way, as long as I'm hanging out with the sloppies, I'm going to feel just fine being sloppy. As soon as I start hanging out with people who know how to dress a little more presentable, I'm either going to get offended and walk away because I don't want to do that, or I'm going to sense a need to step it up a little bit and improve a little bit. By the way, we could use that a lot in this day and age. But that's what the children of Israel are facing. Why rebuild the walls? Well, they're hoping for revival in the hearts. But revival in the hearts is not even really something desired, because why are we desiring to do anything? Look around us. Look. It's all a mess. Why am I worried about fixing the mess in my personal life when everything around me is a mess? So you fix the mess. Next thing you know, the walls are going up and all the rubble's being taken away. Next thing you know, the gates are going back up and they're on their hinges. Boy, everything looks good. Boy, but things are looking sharp. And all of a sudden, the person who's been living with, with half the roof missing and the wall blown out, and they're like, oh, no big deal. The rest of the wall blown out too. All of a sudden, they're like, man, I got to fix my sloppy little house up. I need to fix this, man. I need to work on this. I need to work on my area. And then all of a sudden they're like, man, I guess we could try to look like God's people a little bit more instead of like slaves. Maybe we ought to step it up in our appearance. Maybe we ought to step it up a little bit in our desires. Maybe we ought to step it up a little bit in our drive for doing things. Why? Because their surroundings were changing and things were improving, and all of a sudden it challenged the individual with change. And so Nehemiah knows the people need revival. The other men of God that were sent there for different purposes, they see and they know, and they've been preaching and they've been proclaiming that God's people need revival. Nehemiah comes in and Nehemiah says, my heart's broken for the walls and the city. Look, everything's a shambles and nobody seems to really care, and everybody's living their life like, who cares? How are we ever going to see revival when we don't care? We're living this portion of our life with carelessness, and we think that this portion over here is going to desire God. Not going to happen. So we need to get this portion over here. Let's build this up, and then all of a sudden we look and say, man, I think I need to catch up with what's going on. So God's people will start seeing revival personally because everything around them is making them have the sense of we're Israel. We're the people of God. This is Jerusalem. That's the temple. And by the way, by chapter 8, there's something burning in them, and as soon as they hear the scriptures, they weep. And so Nehemiah has been working for this point of getting the surroundings to be appropriate for the children of God. Maybe that'll help drive them to a desire of appropriateness within. And as soon as they start this, we said in verse number 4, there's the outside external oppositions of mockery and making fun of the entire people. There, in chapter 5, there is the internal issues that have just kind of been pushed down and suppressed and shoved under the rug, and nobody makes a deal out of it. And all of a sudden, now it's become a big deal, and they can't do anything but have to deal with it. It's in your face. They got to deal with it. They can't move forward without handling the internal problems. Then chapter 6 comes in, and all these oppositions, all these issues haven't quite worked. And so you have those on the outside. The external opposition now takes a little bit of a turn in how they handle things. Now, instead of attacking the entirety of the people, now they are going to go after Nehemiah himself. And if they can pull him down, they'll pull the entire project down. And the people themselves will be discouraged and stop. So they come to Nehemiah, and we're just going to look at verse number 1 and verse number 2 very quickly. They come to Nehemiah, and it says in verse number 1 of chapter 6, now it came to pass when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had builded the wall, and that there was no breach left therein. Now, here's an interesting fact. This tells you a little bit more about what took place. The entirety of the walls, though we looked at the walls and the gates, the entirety of the walls were rebuilt first. The gates were prepared, but were not actually repaired until the very end. Okay? They were put together, but they weren't hung on their hinges. They weren't put to the gates yet. The walls and all the openings were completed. And we know that by this verse. And there was no breach left therein. So all the walls are completed, though at that time I had not set up the doors upon the gates. So in other words, the doors themselves were not in place. And so you have all the walls, and when they heard the walls, there's no more breaches, there's no more breakdowns. Everything is coming together, and it's beginning to be completed, though the doors of the gates in themselves were not actually in place yet. Verse number 2 says, then Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, come, let us meet together in some one of the villages of the plain of Ono. But they thought to do me mischief. Now, there have been many a preacher. I know Pastor Smith's brain probably went straight there. Many a preacher has emphasized the fact of how unique it is that they would ask him to go to the plain of Ono. Oh, no. Oh, no. We ain't going there. Now, there's the obvious in that sense. But here's what's interesting, I find as well. And this is, by the way, this is the way Satan works. And this is the way those who oppose the gospel, those who oppose God's people, this is the way that they work. And a lot of times when they are becoming crafty and they are getting sneaky and they're trying to take down someone who can encourage to bring down others, okay? If they're going to go for the head, they're not always going to go with honesty. Now, sometimes they're just blatant honest and just let you have it. But for the most part, when they start realizing none of that's really working, then they start getting sneaky. That's how Satan works. Satan's not always as interested in chopping your head off as you think. He would much rather just take the fiery darts of the wicked and throw them at you and hit you a little here and hit you a little there, and you slowly bleed to death while you're thinking you're okay. Regardless, you're going to be out, whether he chops your head off or you bleed to death. But bleeding to death is going to be less obvious, and you'll probably think you're fine until all of a sudden you realize you're not. That's how Satan works with the temptation of sin and the temptation of the things that we are to resist and be aware of his tactics, you might say. But as a whole, they come to him, and here's what you'll find a lot of times. When someone is trying to get you to do something that is of a covert way of trying to derail your direction for God, you'll find it is full of a whole bunch of the word I'm thinking of, it just skipped my brain. Non-specifics. Generalities. It's going to be full of a whole bunch of generalities. And you say, what do you mean by that? Well, look what they come to him with. Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages. Can I say, they weren't really concerned as to where they met, as long as they could get him to come out and come down from the work. Very general, very just, hey, whatever. You name it. We're not even going to put any specifics on you. You just say whatever you feel comfortable with. We'll meet you wherever you want to meet. The generalities and the non-specifics are to give an open opportunity of a seemingly willingness to work with you or help you or assist you, when honestly, there is no desire to work with, help, or assist. It is just a desire to get God's people distracted from the work God has them doing. Well, what's wrong with a little this? Well, it won't be so bad. It's just a little that. Whatever you would feel comfortable with, we're okay with that. In other words, I don't really care what you want to do just as long as you don't serve God. I don't care what exactly, whatever you would like to get together and do just as long as you don't go to church that day. What if you always want to do? I don't have to have it my way. Well, you tell me, what would you really enjoy doing? Let's do it. Tell you what, but let's do it on a Sunday. Or better yet, you've committed to do something and help out in a particular ministry, and there's a particular time frame in a day when that ministry is doing one particular thing, and you've actually committed to it, and all of a sudden, here come all these open opportunities. Hey, we've been wanting to get together for a long time. Where would you like to go? Let's do this. And they know that you had plans. Distraction, distraction, distraction. Now listen, not everybody who does, I'm dealing with people, but not everybody who does that knows exactly what they're doing. Some people have no clue what it is they're doing, but those who are discerning can see that there is a work of Satan to use an opportunity to pull you away from something that you know you should be involved in or doing for the Lord. Well, I'm just going to miss this one time, evidently. I'm just going to miss this one. I'm just going to come down from the wall for this one moment, but we'll be okay. I'm going to get back to it later. Here's what I found. Almost every single time you have a scenario where somebody says, I'm going to come back to it later, they almost never do. They get distracted and they never make it back. You say, preacher, are you trying to say that we just need to focus on God and do nothing else? Not to that degree of ridiculousness in the minds of how some people put it. But I am saying this. If the Lord tells you to do something in an area of ministry or an area of serving Him, the Lord lays on your heart to do it, be ready for distractions and opportunities of change of mind, and you can get back to it the next time. But here's the problem. if Nehemiah had come down from the wall and had met them in some place that was comfortable for him and had come to wherever they wanted to go in the area of Ono, it would have been uh-oh in Ono. Because Nehemiah knew this. They've never had the interest of the Lord in mind. They've never desired the things of God as I desire. They're not interested in seeing God's people flourish. They're not interested in joining with things that matter to the Lord. They're not interested in helping in any way that's going to uplift and build up God's people. They're not interested in any of that. All they want is for me to come down and stop the work. All they want is for me to put a pause and put myself in their arena where they can more highly influence whether or not I ever return. Now, I understand, I do speak in some areas of generalities with this just because, number one, it's easier to do that without offending too greatly. At the same time, I don't have any particular things in mind. All I know is if I could go back and my brain would work with me, I could probably give you at least a dozen different instances where this played out in different ways. And the individuals came down from the wall just for one meeting, just for one distraction, just for one thing other than what God wanted them to do. Well, somebody else will fill in, I'll be back, and they never made it back. They never went to the mission field. They never served God full time as they said the Lord had laid in their heart was their calling. They never once again came out soul winning. They never once again really used any opportunity to pass out a tract because they got a little uncomfortable with it over time because they hadn't done it in so long. They get to a point all of a sudden they were on fire, ready to do something, ready to go, and then distraction. And instead of saying no, they said, just once, I'll be right back. Gone. Some of them, not just gone from the opportunities of service, gone, and I've never seen them even back in church. Young people we've worked with for years, young people we went to Smite Camp with for years, taught and trained and did Bible clubs with for years, called to do something for the Lord, called maybe not to be in full-time ministry, but just wanted to serve faithfully wherever they were. Now they're gone. They don't even attend church, and they are getting married, in many of them, in worldly scenarios. They're marrying outside. They're being unequally yoked with unbelievers through marriage because they're out in the world, and they're having children now, and their children know nothing about God. And those young people grew up in the house of God, grew up under the preaching of God, grew up going to camps, telling boys and girls about Jesus, and now, honestly, they want nothing to do with it. And some of them, because they took one time and decided to come down off the wall instead of doing the work. It's just once, but they never made it back. Nehemiah, what he's facing here is a conspiracy, a desire to distract him, just to have him come down, but they didn't mean to just distract him in that aspect. They desired to kill him. May I say, Satan desires to kill spiritually anybody who will come off the wall. You go from a burning desire to serve God, and all of a sudden, Satan just absolutely stabs that desire with complacency. He infuses that individual with a sense of, y'all help me with, what's the word? My brain is not helping me tonight. Becomes static. Y'all are not helping me either. Wow, come on now. What's that? My brain's at home, that's right. It's like, Stagnant, yes, but apathy. It came back to me. Apathy. Satan takes someone with desire to serve God and infuses into them apathy. And next thing you know, I don't care. I don't want to do anything. Do we have to go to church? Do we have to give anything to God? Do we have to do this and have to do that? What a waste of our time. And those are the individuals that said, I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of it. Let's go. When's the next time we're going out? When's the next time we can do that? Boy, can we go to a bus stop? Can we do this? Can we do that? Where else can we go? They were once excited, and now, I really don't care. Now, listen, that is the essence of exactly what they wanted to do to Nehemiah. They wanted to destroy him. Now, they were going to kill him in the process, physically. But by destroying him, they would discourage the rest. By destroying him, they would remove some of the fuel out of getting this thing done. By destroying him, they could stop this work because they did not want to see the children of God actually get back to serving God and being blessed by God and influencing the communities around them. They did not want them back in a place of being blessed by God. And so they were angry, and they decided to just try to conspire and trick. See if we can get Nehemiah in an off time. Get Nehemiah when he's not paying attention. Get Nehemiah by something maybe that would draw his fancy away from the job he has to do. As a whole, they were upset because these individuals, Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, they were upset because they had lost their fear factor over the people of Israel. Children of Israel weren't fearing anymore them. They were fearing the Lord. They lost the control through fear. Then they also lost their pagan and atheistic control over the people as well, because as they begin to serve the Lord, they begin to turn their back on all the things that these individuals are teaching them. Well, they start, not listening to us and start going back to their temple and serving their God. We'll have no control over them. We'll have no influence over them. They won't listen to a single thing that we tell them society expects of them. We tell them, society says, this is now right. They're not going to listen to us. They're going to listen to their God. We can't have that. They need to follow the flow. They need to go with what we tell them. They need to listen to what we influence in their lives. I mean, before you know it, they'll be canceling their Facebook accounts because they're tired of the influencers telling them what to think. And they'll start reading their Bibles more and letting God tell them what to think. Boy, that's really going to help us. We got to stop this. That's where they're at. And so they were just seeking to derail one man because he could be the key to the whole thing. They conspired, and I've taken more time than I planned, but they conspired against Nehemiah because he was seeking to accomplish something great for God. If Satan isn't worried about you, you should be worried. Nehemiah could concur in one aspect with the way David felt. And I'll give you this, and then I'm going to close and we'll be done. But I got to read this to you. Nehemiah, in this scenario, and we'll look at his answer. We'll look at all that takes place after this. And Nehemiah absolutely lets them have it. I love that part. But in Psalm 35, starting in verse number 11, listen to what David says about the struggle he's having. It says, false witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. They rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into mine own bosom. I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. But in mine adversity they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. Yea, the abjects gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and ceased not. With hypocritical mockers in feast, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. Well, that is the reality of how things are today in many places. But verse number 17 is honestly where I can feel the most like David. Said, Lord, how long wilt thou look on? What he's saying is, Lord, how long are you going to watch this and not do anything? How long are you going to see what's happening and, can I put it in our terms, not slap them silly? Lord, when are you going to send the fire down? How long, Lord, verse number 17, how long wilt thou look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling from the lions. Now, as a whole, Nehemiah knew what it was to have to trust in God while he had all these threats and all these distractions and all these things coming against him. But Nehemiah had to do more than just be firm on what he's doing. Nehemiah had to have balance. He had to be firm, but he also had to have some humility about him too. Because you can be firm and just torch everybody. Or you can be firm and use wisdom in how you handle things. I will give you this and we're done. But the Christian life is not about comfort, but about conflict. Now, don't go looking for conflict because it's going to find you plenty of times just as easy as anything else. So you don't have to go searching for conflict. But the Christian life, we tend to think in America, the Christian life is about comfort, the blessings of God. Bless me, bless me, bless me. I'm blessed, I'm better than the rest. But, and again, don't get me wrong, I love the comforts. I love to see when God's blessing. I love to see when it's evident that the Lord's moving through and just seeing things grow and seeing things increase and improve. And I mean, that's wonderful. The great years of harvest are wonderful times, but the lean years can be helpful too. You tend to learn a lot more in the lean years. The Christian life is not about comfort, it's about the conflict. It's a battlefield, brother, not a recreation room, a fight and not a game. So run if you want to, run if you will, but I came here to stay. It's not about honor. It's about humility. That doesn't mean you lay down like a rug and get walked over and the shoes wiped on you. Humility is not being a doormat. Humility is handling yourself with a godlike nature no matter what it is you're facing. Or let's say, put it this way, regardless of what you want to say, regardless of what you want to do, regardless of how you want to act, there's still a right way to act. And Lord, give me the wisdom and humility to act in a way that this flesh would not want to. David had to show that humility. By the way, Nehemiah had to show some humility. But the Christian life is not just about getting honor. I'm a Christian, aren't I a great person? No, it's not about honor, it's about humility. By the way, the humblest of individuals is the one that God, and Jesus Christ even said that's the one that's going to be great in the kingdom of God. The smallest, the least in the kingdom of God is going to be the greatest. And it's not about our glory, but it's all about his glory. And so Nehemiah, you say, well, Nehemiah just wanted to build his wall. No, Nehemiah wanted to do something that glorified God. Well, Nehemiah just wanted to fortify the children of Israel again. No, Nehemiah wanted to give the children of Israel an ability to look around and say, there's something that needs to change. It's changing all around me. It needs to change in me. Nehemiah wanted all things to draw the people of God back to the God they had forsaken. And if that means we got to rebuild the walls, we got to rebuild the walls. That means we got to put the gates back up, let's get the gates back up. We got to get the temple back in place, get the temple back in place. You got to put your house back in order, put your house back in order. Regardless, our goal is to get our eyes fixed on him. So that when everybody around us saying, hey, why don't you just come down for a little while, take a break, come talk with us just a little while, then you can go back. We can look and say, sorry, what we are doing is too important. What we're providing for our children is too important. What we're seeking to accomplish for the generations after us is too important. I can't come down. I must stay at the work because it's a work that pleases him and it's going to help draw us back to our eyes on the Lord. So no, I won't come down. You're just going to have a party by yourself. We're going to stay at the work. That's Nehemiah's focus. They're trying to get him. We're going to see a little bit more when we look at it next time as to what all he has to say to them and what all it shows us for the remainder of chapter 6. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for a night.